Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Oh, don't laugh. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay? Because we're all on the same team. And I was told that, sir, you won't hear a murmur in the room. I said, we got to loosen these guys up a little bit. So you just have a good time. But I want to thank Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, General Raisin Kane for a reason, they call him that. When I heard his name, I said, you're the guy I'm looking for. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and so many others in this room who together represent the greatest and most elite fighting force in the history of the world, the United States military. We're very proud of our military. I rebuilt the military during my first term. It's one of the greatest achievements. We had the greatest economy in history, and I built the military. Those are the two things I say more than anything else. And I also kept us safe at the borders. We had very good borders. We didn't have people coming in from jails and prisons and everything like took place over the last 4 years. They'll never forget what happened to this country over the last 4 years with the incompetence. There could be no higher honor than to serve as your commander-in-chief. It is a great honor. I look at you, you're just incredible people. Central casting, I might add. To each and every one of you, I thank you for your unwavering devotion to the armed forces and to the country that we've all sworn a sacred oath to defend. We all have that oath, every one of us. I'm thrilled to be here this morning to address the senior leadership of what is once again known around the world as the Department of War. I know Pete spoke about it. He gave a great speech, I thought. Great speech. I don't want him to get so good. I hate that. You know? No, I hate it. I almost fired him. I said, you can't, I don't want to go on after that. No, he gave a great speech, but he talked about Department of War. We were sitting there. I said, didn't it used to be called the Department of War? And he goes, yes, sir. They changed it like in the early 50s. So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything in between and everything before that. We only won. And then we went, in a way, woke. That was probably the first sign of wokeness. And we changed it to defense instead of war. And I said, what do you think? How do you think if we changed it back? Would that be a nice idea? And Pete loved it immediately. Some people thought about it. You know, they gave it a little thought. But in the end, we did it. And I have to be honest, it's so popular. I thought it would be met with fury on the left, but they're sort of giving up, I must be honest with you. They've had it. They've had it with Trump. They've been after me for so many years now. Here we are. Here we are. Come to the White House anytime you'd like. No, they've given up. They're bad, a lot of bad people. But all over, that's been so popular. It's been very popular. I really thought that we were going to have to sort of fight it through. There's been no fight. There's been no fight. Like what I called the Gulf of America, the Gulf of America, because to me it was always the Gulf of America. I could never understand. We have 92% of the frontage. And for years, actually 350 years, they were there before us. It was called the Gulf of Mexico. I just had this idea. I'm looking at a map. I'm saying, we have most of the frontage. Why is it Gulf of Mexico? Why isn't it the Gulf of America? And I made the change, and it went smoothly. I mean, we had a couple of fake news outlets that refused to make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court, and we won. And the judge, who was a somewhat liberal judge, said, the name is the Gulf of America, because AP refused to call it the Gulf of America. They wrote, they're not a good outfit, by the way. They call it the Gulf of Mexico. I said, no, the Gulf of America is the name. And the judge actually said that, in fact, you can't even go into the room because what you're doing is not appropriate. The name is the Gulf of America. Google Maps changed the name. Everybody did, but AP wouldn't, and then we won in court. How about that? Isn't that so cool? The Secretary Hegseth beautifully described the name change reflects far more than the shift in branding. It's really a historic reassertion of our purpose and our identity and our pride. That's when we go with the word war. And we want war because we want to have no wars, but you have to be there, and sometimes you have to do it. I have settled so many wars since we're here. We're here almost 9 months, and I've settled 7, and yesterday we might have settled the biggest of them all, although I don't know. Pakistan, India was very big. Both nuclear powers, I settled that. But yesterday could be the settlement in the Middle East. That hasn't happened for 3,000 years. I said, how long have you been fighting? 3,000 years, sir. That's a long time. But we got it, I think, settled. We'll see. Hamas has to agree. And if they don't, it's going to be very tough on them. But it is what it is. But all of the Arab nations, Muslim nations have agreed. Israel has agreed. It's an amazing thing. It just came together. War is very strange, You never know what's going to happen with war. The easiest one of them all is Putin. I said, number one, it's a war that would have never happened if I were president, if the election weren't rigged. If I were president, that war would have never happened. Not even a little chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. But I knew Putin very well, and I thought that would be easy because I know him so well. Well, that one turned out to be the hardest of them all. We had some that were not settlable, and they all got settled. So if this works out, that we did yesterday with the Middle East, then that's more than a war. That's lots of wars. That's all combined. That's a lot of wars. Many of you were over there in many different capacities in many different countries. That's a big part of the earth. But if that works out, it would be 8+. I'm going to give myself 2 or 3 for that one. And then we just have the one to settle, and we have to settle it up with President Putin and Zelensky. Got to get them together and get it done. But the only way we can do that is through strength. I mean, if we were weak, they wouldn't even take my phone call. But we have extreme strength. We had the horror show in Afghanistan, which is really the reason I think that Putin went in. He saw that horror show by Biden and his team of incompetent people. And that showed, I think it gave him a path in. I wasn't there any longer. I watched that, and it was so horrible. I think it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country.